Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Bakari Lumumba back once again. The progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Back once again, we're going to be honoring the life and legacy of one Fannie Lou Hamer, one of the, I argue, criminally unsung heroes of the civil rights movement, or as Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffrey calls it, freedom rights movement. So we're going to get into what freedom rights means. But if you're watching, make sure you hit the subscribe and the like button as well as the notification bell. Appreciate you all watching, friends and well wishers, even enemies, right? So we're going to go over the ground rules, and then we're going to get into the conversation regarding honoring the life and legacy of one Fannie Lou Hamer. As you all know, we have some ground rules here at Lumumba Speaks. First and foremost, we believe in diversity of thought, right? So we got to do a little housekeeping. We believe in diversity of thought. However, you are not entitled to your own facts, right? So just want to make sure that people are aware of that you can tap in. You could be on the left, on the right, even down the middle. Doesn't cause me any harm. But we want to make sure that you are making claims that are factual and not patently false. Number two, no racial epithets of any kind. As you all know, this is a Black empowerment initiative here at Lumumba Speaks, and so we don't allow individuals to use racial epithets of any kind on this channel for any reason, irrespective of one's political ideology, personal values, life experience, or even a geopolitical location. Number three, we focus on facts over feelings, right? So listen, you can have any perspective that you want regarding the conversation that we're going to have. We want to make sure that people are undergirding their positions with factual information. Then last but not least, as I stated, no fundamentally false statements. So we're going to get right into it. As you all know, this is Women's History Month, right? And so I oftentimes argue that it's Black Women's History Month, right? Black Women's History Month, not just Women's History Month. And we know that unfortunately, oftentimes, the contributions of Black women, sisters in the struggle, as they say, it's oftentimes overlooked, right? If we think about the Garvey movement and the UNI, Universal Negro Improvement Association, many don't think about, of course, the contributions and helping even founding organization, even securing financial support for what UNI, which was done by Garvey's first wife, Amy Ashwood Garvey. And then, of course, we know the work of his second wife, Amy J. Garvey. And, of course, continuing the legacy, recording his writing, publishing his works to keep his legacy and the ideology of Garveyism moving forward. When we talk about the Black radical tradition of audacious self-insertion, that is what we know and call Pan-Africanism. So we know that there's a history of this. We can even go back to what many argue is the father of Pan-Africanism, one Henry Sylvester Williams. We know the Trinidadian barrister who coined the term Pan-Africanism, but it was with the help of a sister from South Africa by the name of Miss Kinloch. So we know that sisters have always played a fundamental role in the struggle for freedom rights, as Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffrey calls it. And of course, I would be remiss in my duty if we didn't mention Queen Mother Yaa Asantewaa, who at the age of 60 led the last war of resistance against the British, known as the War of the Golden Stool. So we know that sisters have always played a pivotal role in, of course, the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion and this idea of freedom rights. And so I want to make sure that we honor the moral obligation to remember. We also know that Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer, who was one of our ancestors, taught us to never forget where you come from, and always praise the bridges that carried us over. And so, of course, one of those bridges that we're going to praise this evening, of course, is Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer. So strap in, buckle up, and we're going to honor the life and legacy of one Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer. So for many of you who may be unaware, she was born October 16, 1917 in Montgomery County, Mississippi. We're talking about the Magnolia State, right? And she transitioned to the realm of the ancestors on March 14, 1977. So yesterday was the 46th anniversary of her transition to the realm of the ancestors. She of course, succumbed to heart disease and cancer, right? And so I talked about this concept of freedom rights, right? Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffries talks about freedom rights. He argues that this freedom rights is an assortment of civil and human rights that emancipated African Americans identified as the crux of freedom. Right? He argues that framing this concept of the civil rights movement, he seeks to frame the civil rights movement as a freedom rights movement to acknowledge the centrality of course, chattel enslavement, the Holocaust of enslavement, in the aegis of a comprehensive system of social control. If you're familiar with the brilliant work of one Michelle Alexander, she of course wrote the brilliant text 11 years ago entitled "The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Color Blindness," where she talks about that African Americans in America have been subject to a system of social control that began with chattel enslavement, morphed into sharecropping, black codes, convict leasing, Jim Crow, and of course now the new Jim Crow. And we know the argument that one Michelle Alexander makes is that there's been a push, and many people can make this argument for numerous reasons, particularly when it even comes to the privatization of prisons. And then, of course, we know there's some brilliant work by Dr. Khalid Muhammad entitled "The Condemnation of Blackness," right? But the argument that Michelle Alexander makes is that once you're labeled a felon, you could be legally discriminated against in the same manner that African Americans were discriminated against during the Jim Crow era. So if you have not read The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, who I believe is a Warrior scholar, you definitely want to check out her work. So make sure you do that. But when we talk about Fannie Lou Hamer, once again, I say that at the beginning of the broadcast, I think she's one of the criminally unknown, underrated figures in the civil rights, or as Dr. Hassan Kwame Jeffries calls the freedom rights movement. Many people may be unaware. Oftentimes people know her for her famous quote of saying, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." But many are unaware of the fact that she registered thousands, keyword thousands, of Black Mississippians to vote, traveled to West Africa in 1964, created a farm cooperative in 1967, led a school desegregation movement in 1968. I know many people take umbrage, of course, with the push for desegregation of schools. And we know that that's a complex conversation. We could table that, put a pin in it, and have that for another day. But what we do know is that if you've read any literature on the conditions of Black schools in the Magnolia State, to even fight, right, for desegregation, right, and particularly that desegregation fight was the access to what equal funding for schools, you would know that she was taking her life in her own hands, right? I've read significant literature on Fannie Lou Hamer. Many people are unaware of the physical violence that she suffered by being a civil rights advocate, right? Pushing people to register to vote, herself registering to vote, having been evicted the same day that she attempted to register to vote, going to a friend's house, family friend's house, and having their house shot at, right? During the middle of the night because she registered to vote. Many people may be unaware of when she was taken to prison and it was beaten and suffered irreparable damage, right? She lost sight in her left eye, irreparable damage to her kidneys. So these are some of the conditions and the repressive, actions that took place by the state, right? By police, by sheriffs, right? And many people would argue, why don't you call the police? It was like, who do you think the police are? They're the white supremacists, they're the white nationalists who are the muscle for the white supremacist government. So something to be cognizant of. And of course, she taught thousands to strive for freedom. Of course, she was a pivotal figure at the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee. So, and her primary mission, of course, was to end racial and economic injustice against Black people. So definitely when you talk about she was a race woman, and for those of you who do not know what a race man or woman is, race man or woman is a loyal member of the Black race who dedicated their life to directly contributing to the betterment of Black people. Race men and race women can remain consistently confrontational with the ideas, peoples, institutions, and or nations that threaten the well-being of the Black African race, right? So we know this definition of a race man or woman comes from one Assata Shakur, who of course is in Cuba right now, and she's one of the preeminent sisters in the struggle. And I think we will do a show on her. So definitely just wanted to tap in and do a show honoring the life and legacy of one Fannie Lou Hamer. As I said before, many people may be unaware of who she is. And then also we know that oftentimes, unfortunately, the contributions that sisters have made in the struggle for African redemption at home and abroad tend to be criminally, keyword criminally, overlooked. So if you have not familiarized yourself with one Fannie Lou Hamer, I think you're doing a disservice not only to the movement for the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion, but also if you find yourself as someone who believes, and of course being a race man, a race woman, you definitely need to look at her work, because the struggle that she had, of course, it wasn't in the limelight, right? She wasn't out in front, and she didn't have the cameras on her the way one Martin Luther King did, Malcolm X, or even what Stokely Carmichael, right? But she was as pivotal, particularly in the work that was being done behind the scenes in rural Mississippi, right? M.I. crooked letter I, right? And so I think that anyone who was serious about learning about the history, the tradition, of course, of not only the pervasive nature of anti-Blackness, I even argue in much of my scholarship that anti-Blackness is ubiquitous, right? But when we talk about African people, Black people, African Americans never acquiescing, never capitulating, right? Never acquiescing their humanity, their Africanity, right? I think the work of one Fannie Lou Hamer is a pivotal example of that, right? And of course, we can find that throughout the Western diaspora, of course, with Haiti, with the Maroon Society, so on and so forth. But as I said before, I think oftentimes the sisters who have contributed in the struggle have been criminally, keyword criminally, underrated, right? They don't get the fanfare that they need. And I think that if we're looking at really solving many of the issues that we have in our community, particularly, I think the manufactured gender divide, the artificially manufactured gender divide, we should look at some of the work of our Queen mothers who were activists. One Fannie Lou Hamer, one Ella Jo Baker, one Mary Church Terrell, one Assata Shakur, right? You look at the classical era, modern era, Ida B. Wells, so on and so forth, and look at what they did and how they worked to, of course, accomplish what they needed to, but also make sure that they weren't alienating individuals in the community as well. I think this is a great example and a great chance to do that during, of course, Black Women's History Month. So haven't had anyone log on, but just wanted to take some time out of my day, my evening, to share with my viewers that, of course, yesterday, March 14th, was the 46th anniversary of the transitioning of Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer to the realm of the ancestors, as well as just taking some time out to help brothers and sisters who may be unaware of who Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer was, her contributions to not only the civil rights movement, but also what is known as freedom rights, and why she is someone who should be in your mental Rolodex. We talk about individuals in that great line of divine that is, of course, the Black radical tradition of audacious self-assertion. So that's all that I have. Until next time, y'all know what to do. Peace. So just got someone to tap in. I'm going to put the link in the chat. eShore ENT. Appreciate you. I'm going to put the link in the chat if you want to tap in and be part of the conversation. I was just about to log off. And the link should also be in the description. We're having a conversation about honoring the life and legacy, of course, of Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer. So you can let us know if you're familiar with the life and the work of one Fannie Lou Hamer, if you're familiar with her legacy. Of course, she was a pivotal co-creator, co-progenitor of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, played a role in, of course, fighting against the Dixiecrats, as Malcolm X called them, in Mississippi, that were, of course, vehemently anti-Black and racist. And so, of course, she played a key role and really burst on the scene when she gave that speech at a Democratic National Convention in, I believe, Atlantic City, New Jersey. So definitely, if you all want to tap in and be part of the conversation, that'd be greatly appreciated. If not, we'll log off. But want to know if there's anyone familiar, with, of course, with the life and legacy of one Fannie Lou Hamer, who taught us to never forget where we come from and always praise the bridges that carried us over. All right. Okay. Absolutely. So yes, we're going to tap out. I appreciate everyone who did log on, even if it was rather brief. But I would argue, take this time to go out and hey, you just do a brief Google search and do some research on, of course, Queen Mother Fannie Lou Hamer. And just want to share, there's a new book out by Dr. Keisha Blaine. She's a professor of history, and she actually, her research focuses on, of course, Black women in Black power movements, right? And so I'm going to show the book here. Until I'm Free, Fannie Lou Hamer's Enduring Message to America by one Keisha N. Blaine, right? So Keisha Blaine also wrote the book, Set the World on Fire, Black Nationalist Women in the Global Struggle for Freedom. And so what we tend to find, Keisha Blaine, of course, is a PhD. She's a professor of African American history, if I'm not mistaken, at Brown University, Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island. But her work focuses on, of course, Black women and Black power movements, right? So definitely want you all to take a look at that if you get a chance. And until next time, y'all know what to do. Peace.